One question we get asked all the time as travellers is, what about education?
Come join us today as we share some of the things that we've been doing on our journey.
Woohoo!
We don't need no education. Pink Floyd.
Come on, man. You do this. Come with us today.
What? Come with us today. We're going to tell you all these amazing things about what we do for education for our children.
Hi everyone, welcome to Learning Brave. I'm Skylar.
And I'm Ross.
And today we are addressing a question that we often get asked.
It's a hot topic.
What about education, particularly for travellers? So we are full-time travellers, and this is something that we think a lot about.
Well, particularly because we have 5 children.
Yes, we have 5 kids.
Ranging from 15 to 4.
And our journey has actually evolved. So we're going to tell a little bit of that story. So when we first began, we started off as world schoolers, and we are still world schoolers for sure. And we've talked more about that in depth, about what is world schooling. So we, as world schoolers, like to embrace hands-on learning at source as much as possible.
Yeah, like going to the places that we're going to, study about. If we want to study about the church in Europe, we'll go to some churches in Europe.
Yeah.
Or some castles in Europe, or whatever it is that we want to do.
Yeah, we like to touch and feel history and immerse ourselves as much as possible in the learning.
Well, I think it gives the kids also a visual, and a visual experience of learning about that particular topic rather than just in a book.
So as we began our journey as world schoolers, it actually led us to take a much more kind of unschooled approach. So unschooling sounds like a terrible word.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
It sounds like you're a dummy.
Let's unschool our children.
What it actually means is child-led learning. So
and also taking them away from the classroom environment out into the world to sort of learn that way as well.
Yeah, because book learning is super important, but not all book learning has to happen in a classroom, and not all learning needs to be from a book or within 4 walls. So that's what we came to embrace. So as world schoolers, we did begin to take more of a unschooled approach.
Yeah, I think the first 9 months of our journey as we travelled around Europe, that was a really good experience to be able to, that environment helped us to experiment unschooling because we were not in any classroom. Our family and our car and our experiences every day was our classroom.
So we didn't begin, that's not the background that we came from. So we came from a background of very traditional schooling. Ross and I both went to, in Australia, we call it primary school and high school. We both finished university, and we did all of our traditional education, and it was great in many ways.
And our children too, they began their education in a traditional primary school, elementary school in Australia.
It was great, but there were some real drawbacks. For me, the biggest drawback is that art subjects were quite demoted in order of importance.
Peasants feel you have no regard for them.
What? I have no regard for the peasants. They are my people. I am their sovereign. I love them. Pull!
So in Australia, actually, for our tertiary scores, if you studied art subjects, they were pushed down. So you could never get a 99 out of 100 if you studied arts. It's almost like you were made to look dumber, even though that wasn't true. And so if you wanted to get a really high score, you had to do maths and sciences and business and stuff like that. So I didn't like that. I'm an arts girl, and I did arts, and I did arts in university, and I loved it. But I always felt like the environment in my traditional schooling wasn't as inspiring as it could have been for those arty people like me.
Which all of our children are.
Yeah, all of our kids are artistic.
They follow after her. They don't follow after me, who is very non-arty.
So we were feeling a certain level of dissatisfaction with our kids in traditional schooling. That's how we left. So we'd only known this one way, and then we just like left and embraced world schooling, and we were just like, we'll just see how it goes.
Bye-bye, boys.
Have fun storming the castle.
Think it'll work?
It would take a miracle. Bye-bye.
So I think one of the first things that really helped us to embrace some alternative schooling options was by actually getting out of our traditional schooling environment. So when we left, first of all, to Europe, we were away from everything that we'd been used to. And so we were, I think, as people, and we're very inquisitive, and we wanted to learn from all the different people and cultures that we'd come in contact with. Our minds were in an environment that were ready to learn. And I think that was the first thing. Like many of the big things and decisions that I've learned in my life is because I was able to get my mind in the right place to accept those things. And
to be open to new ideas.
Yeah.
Like we put ourselves in a position where we could look at new ways of thinking and new ways of doing things that we might have been completely shut off to earlier in our old life.
And it's funny because thinking back to that, initially we thought we're just going to follow the Australian curriculum step by step while we were traveling in Europe. And I think mainly because of necessity and thinking this is going to be awful, we just sort of loosened up a little bit and were more accepting of alternatives. And it was a much better journey for us that first 9 months away.
Absolutely. It was a huge learning curve. So getting out from our comfort zones we had lots of conversations with people around us. Particularly when we were in Germany and Austria, we made some good friends who we had lots of discussions about education. And they had all these things to talk about and experiences and new ideas that I'd never heard. I made this good friend who talked to me about this really great German documentary called Alphabet. I think you can get on iTunes.
I think so.
Not sure where else. But in that, it discusses all these different kinds of education around the world and their effectiveness. And we watched it together. And she told me about a democratic school that I'd never heard of. Or in England, they're called a Sudbury school. Sudbury school, which involves the children forming a democracy and making their own decisions for their education and free open time for what they want to learn.
Very student-led.
Like totally different from anything we'd ever heard before. And so Ross and I were like, that's fascinating. Like I've never even thought of that before.
See the world?
That's fascinating, Vanessa.
And we were just really interested in all these different things.
And that then led us to want to investigate that a little bit more. So we started to read some books. And I think you got recommended a book early on, didn't you?
Yeah, I was recommended to read Dumbing Us Down, The Hidden Curriculum of Compulsory Schooling.
By John Gatto.
Yes. And I didn't get to it until kind of the end of our trip. And we were in Italy and I had to read one page at a time. Almost. I would read a little bit and be like...
Her reading of this went a bit like this. I'm sitting in the bed next to her, she's reading away, and then all of a sudden it'd be like... Wow!
Yes! Because I'd just be like...
It was like every page was mind-blowing.
Because I'd read stuff that described why I was dissatisfied and what wasn't working, and he explained it, and then I'd read these little bits and be like... I agree.
There was an affinity, wasn't there?
Yes, I agreed with what he was saying, and I just hadn't ever had it presented to me before when I had an open mind. I just hadn't discussed it before and thought about it.
Yeah.
And
So
it literally, it just changed our lives. Just reading that one book that we were like,
yeah.
You read it too.
Yeah, I couldn't not read it. She was next to me, drawing me in every page.
It was just so amazing.
Yeah.
Just these ideas that learning is what matters. Education is what matters. The type of schooling is not as important as
the process of learning.
Yeah. That's right. So we had a big, exciting trip to Europe, 9 months, non-stop. We came home from 9 months away, vastly different. We were really changed in how we view things. We were way more relaxed about keeping our kids on schedule. We adopted the idea that kids will learn when they're ready to learn if they're provided with enough inspiration and materials and encouragement. So we just really embraced this idea.
So then we returned to Australia, and our life was a bit different because for a while we were sort of sedentary. We weren't traveling, and we were sort of went back to a little bit of normal life again, albeit in a different part of Australia. But we stayed in the one place for 6 months.
Yeah, and Ross was studying,
Yeah.
and we were exploring a new area, but we weren't moving around in a foreign country, so it was a different thing. So what we did is we embraced more of a homeschool approach. Homeschool, unschool. We consider ourselves to be like a bit of everything.
Yeah,
But
we're a mixed breed.
Yeah, but when we slow down, we have learned that we do more of a homeschool approach. So we pull out more books, we were at the library, we were using the internet, we were just kind of learning that way as much as possible.
Whereas like world schooling, each day is like a new classroom. When you're not traveling all the time and you're staying in one place, you've got to create a new classroom in a sense. So, you have to try and get a bit of structure to what you're doing. And we try to encourage our children to be involved in different subjects and different topics. And there's a bit more work for us as parents in creating that environment.
Although we didn't do any strict curriculums or anything.
No.
Because of how we've been influenced from our journey through Europe, we were pretty relaxed. So we were still quite child-led. We did, we offered pocket money for book reports, and we had a few...
We did some maths.
We did some maths. We got into their hobbies. We just kind of did as much learning as we could. We have since continued traveling to different parts of the world. So we have been full-time travelers for over 4 years now. And we left Australia. We had about maybe 9 months in Australia after the first 9 months in Europe. We left, and we've since then tried a variety of schooling and education.
We don't just go, this is the only schooling I'm going to do. We're happy to try lots of things.
Yeah.
Because I believe that in all the different methods of schooling, I'm not talking education, but schooling, that there are great things that you can learn from each of them.
And some fit different kids better than others.
Yeah.
So some kids thrive in traditional schooling and some kids just don't.
But they thrive in many other different areas. And that's the cool thing, that when I grew up, if you didn't thrive in traditional schooling, you were nothing. You were like the dummy. Yeah, you were dumb, and you were never going to amount to anything in this world.
Yeah.
But that's not the case, I think, in the options that we have in schooling today.
We're going to go into this more in depth in a future video, all the different kinds of schooling we've tried. But we have tried out at least 7 different kinds.
Yep.
We've done homeschooling, world schooling, unschooling, online schooling, Montessori, traditional. We've done forest school. We are willing to try anything pretty much that will help our kids learn.
And there was elements to all of them, I think, that were good.
Yeah, like we found that some things fit good for a certain period of time, and then we moved on to find something better.
And the other thing too is that the age of your children change. Over 4 years, our children's ages have changed, and so their needs have been different as well.
Yeah.
So initially, the world schooling approach was fine, but as we have our children reach the age of as teenagers, there are different needs. And
Well, they're still world schoolers.
True.
But there's more structure.
Yeah, there's just more structure, and there's more need, I think, for someone else to be involved in their education than just us. That was the case for us.
It's an interesting balance because we want our kids to feel responsible for their own learning. Like, I want them to feel like I choose to learn and educate myself. Like, I want them to say that to themselves and not feel like someone's forcing it upon them. But some teenagers need a bit of a kick in the butt to actually do anything.
To be motivated.
We find a bit of a balance. Our solution for that has been
an online school.
Yeah, we found this amazing online school. We're going to go into it more in the future. But this amazing online, interactive, inspiring school that we can do anywhere around the world. And it's so awesome that Ross now works for them.
I happen to work for them.
Yeah. So that's been something that we've brought into our life as a solution for education and for work. But
Yeah,
we
that's
love
that's
we
a
love
whole
it.
different story,
Yeah.
which we will share with you. But
Yeah.
as far as education for our kids, it's been amazing how important that has been for our teenagers.
Yeah, and they don't even do the full load. They do
Probably a half
half to
three-quarter load.
three-quarter load so that there's enough room left for their hobbies and their interests. I have kids that are really interested in photography and editing and writing. Like right now, as we speak.
Literally as we speak. Our daughter is in the back room. She's just watched this masterclass.
Yeah, we signed up to masterclass to
from
inspire
a
them.
writer, and she was so inspired that all she's done for the last 2 days is she's just written her stories down. And that's wonderful because she's passionate about it, and I want to encourage her. I don't want to stop her and say, oh, time for maths, no, stop, time for science. I want to let her go because she just feels the passion with what she's doing.
Yeah. So the ultimate goal of what we want to achieve in education as travellers and as people, as parents, is that we want our kids to be inspired. We want them to feel curious about all the different options there could be. We want to expose them to lots of different ideas of what they could do to provide income, to be happy, whole people. in their
Essentially,
lives.
so that they can love learning.
Love learning and then love their life. We want them to grow up and feel joy about what they do every day.
I won't. Don't stay inside.
That's like the ultimate goal, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I now get to do that for my work, and I'd love for my kids to be able to do something in the future that they just love to do each day.
Yeah, and you've lived a lot of your life where you did a job that you did not love.
I did not love.
And it was really stressful and
Took
horrible.
me 38 years, but I made it.
So our ultimate goal is that for our kids. We want to inspire them and help them then own that journey of education and then take off with it. And then we support them. I actually hope my kids go to university because I went and I loved it and I got so much out of it. But it depends. I mean, it depends if they... depends what opportunities come up or what career path they want to take. So we're kind of like looking at alternate ways to attend university. So that's another topic we're going to dive into later. It's sort of like in our future still though.
Yeah, we're not
But
quite there.
not
Settle
quite
down,
there.
babe. There's only
But we're
15.
thinking about it because our oldest is 16.
Yeah.
Definitely we're thinking about it. And there are other ways to attend university. There's so many options. There's so many options in the world now.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Like, I don't think this even existed when we were young.
No, I think when we were our children's age, there was no option. But it's so cool that now with all the world changes that are happening, that education options abound. There are so many of them. And
Yeah, and like one right way, that's not the only way to educate.
yeah,
There's not one right way.
yeah. There's a growing movement of all different options, and it's been awesome for our family. So we hope that some of the things we discussed with you today is helpful. Maybe some of you guys are on a similar path and looking for things. If you are, and there are other things that we might have missed, please go ahead and share them in the comments. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah, we'd like to keep engaging in this conversation because we're still on our journey. We're still learning and adapting as different needs arise. And so absolutely, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any more questions or if you would like to hear some crazy funny stories about places we've been in the world, check out our other videos and don't forget to subscribe and also head over to learningbrave.com. Thanks, bye.
Bye. What about education? What are we going to do about education?
Come today on a ride on this magic school bus.
What shall we do with education? What shall
Jimmy
we do with
Higgins